I got up.
About 10.
So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m. only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power? Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber. Get behind the headlines with Chopper's Political Podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics. We'll see where this ruling takes us. These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's Political Podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
Decisions made in Washington aren't just shaping America, they're shaping Britain too. From migration to global security, from crime to health. Whatever happens in the White House today
will be felt in your town or city tomorrow.
That's why The Late Show is live from Washington, DC.
Cutting through the politics to show you what it all means for Britain.
The Late Show live every night at midnight.
Only on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
So he can say whatever he wants.
A straight talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m. weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
A really important thing about GB News, and it's brought something completely different to the landscape.
The mainstream is all about keeping the status quo as it is, ticking along quite nicely. They don't want to ask difficult questions.
GB News exists because there is a desperate need for fearless journalism that puts the people first.
GB News came on the scene as a disruptor, and it has always been a disruptor ever since.
Journalism in this country has been a cosy world full of groupthink until now.
Well, the reality is that most British journalists are afraid. That's not GB News.
Journalism is journalism at the end of the day, and we're not here to serve any masters. Our masters are our audience.
We're here to talk about things in a way that have never been broadcast on British airwaves before.
Do not miss a moment on GB News.
The #1 news channel in the country.
Good evening, this is GB News. I'm Nana Akwe on The Late Show live tonight.
What all of them will have seen is an absolutely packed room, so packed that they stopped letting people in, and what they will have heard was the resounding sound of hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of Labour parliamentarians united in support of our Prime Minister.
Yes, united behind their Prime Minister. That was the message from one Labour MP to GB News viewers after Sir Keir Starmer told MPs, "I have won every fight I've ever been in." But how long has he got? That's the question. We'll be breaking tonight. The Telegraph is reporting that West Streeting has been accused of staging a coup to oust the Prime Minister. He'll have one senior Labour politician joining those calls.
The distraction needs to end, and the leadership in Downing Street has to change.
The leadership has to change. That's what the Labour leader in Scotland and friend of Sir Keir Starmer has said. Great friend that is. Meanwhile, this man is waiting in the wings.
I do today put this party on a general election war footing. We will make sure that when it comes, whenever it is, that we are ready in every way to fight and to win that election.
Nigel Farage has today sent a message to Number 10. Reform are ready to fight a general election anytime, anywhere. Buckingham Palace tonight has released a statement supporting a police investigation into the disgraced Andrew Mountbatten Windsor. As Prince William touched down in Saudi Arabia, our reporter Jack Carson is in the Middle East for us.
I'm here in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, where the Prince of Wales has touched down ahead of a busy few days of engagements, now looking overshadowed by the latest revelations in the Epstein files.
I'm Nana Akwe, and this is The Late Show Live. Well, welcome to The Late Show Live. Joining me this evening is my panel, journalist and broadcaster Benjamin Butterworth, US political commentator Jennifer Ewing, and former Conservative MP and now Labour member Mark Logan, and in Washington, D.C., political commentator Reem Ibrahim. Thank you, Reem, for joining us tonight. Right, let's move on to the main news this evening. It's the biggest news in town. The Prime Minister's government is hanging by a thread. In a closed-door meeting of the Parliamentary Labour Party, the embattled leader is said to have told MPs that he was not prepared to walk away from my mandate. He reportedly told them, "Every fight I've been in, I've won," describing the battle with Nigel Farage and reform as the fight of our lives, the fight of our times. Fighting talk from a man who punches like this.
Just try and whack it. Yes, this is good. And again. That's it. And again. Try and breathe. Relax.
Coming out of the meeting, GB News' political editor Christopher Hope questioned the Secretary of State for the Environment, Emma Reynolds.
Well, the whole cabinet supports the Prime Minister, and I've been in conversation with him at the weekend and indeed last week. We have a united front here, and the meeting of the Parliamentary Labour Party, which I've just come from, there was a real sense of unity in that room behind Keir Starmer, because we need this Labour government to face outwards, not inwards, not having fights with ourselves, but actually focusing on delivering the change that we have a 5-year mandate to do.
Yes, delivering the change, but with the resignation of his Director of Communications, Tim Allen, following the exit of his influential Chief of Staff, Morgan McSweeney, and The Guardian reporting that his top civil servant is set to resign, is the Prime Minister fighting a losing battle, trying to cling on? And breaking tonight in The Telegraph, it is reporting that Wes Streeting has been accused of being in cahoots with the Labour leader in Scotland, Anna Sarwar, to try and oust the Prime Minister. Right, crikey, there's so much going on. Let me know all of your thoughts. No, well, not all of them, obviously. Come on, keep it clean. No, on this subject, of course, and everything we're discussing tonight, gbnews.com/your say. Now, with me to discuss this is journalist and broadcaster Michael Crick. Michael, welcome to the programme. Good evening.
Good evening.
I'm exhausted. It's the beginning of the year. There's been so much going on. OK, let's hear it. Where do you stand on all of this? What are your thoughts?
Well, it looks like Starmer is safe, perhaps for a few more weeks. I mean, clearly there were thoughts about Anna Sarwar tried to kick off a coup or a movement against Starmer. And I think, to everybody's surprise, nobody joined him. The thinking was at about 2:30, 2:45 today, once he'd made his speech in Scotland, that you might get one or two cabinet ministers coming out agreeing with Anna Sarwar that Starmer has to go, that a certain momentum might arise. But instead, there was a very good organised operation by Downing Street to get all the cabinet, one by one, to come out in Starmer's favour. And that carried on into the Parliamentary Labour Party meeting this evening, where lots and lots of Labour MPs got up and said how wonderful Starmer is. And you would have thought that, all the journalists' reports of the last few months and weeks about how Starmer is finished and they want him to go were all rubbish. But, the fact is that very few people have actually publicly come out against Starmer. They're cowardly in a way. They say it privately, but they won't say publicly. And I think there is always within the Labour Party an element of loyalty and solidarity. Maybe it's the sort of trade union background that you don't get in the Conservative Party. They're much more ruthless in the Conservative Party. They don't like a leader. They get rid of them much more quickly. Labour very rarely do get rid of leaders. But Starmer still has huge problems: the economy, the health service, immigration, the Gorton and Denton by-election, and, of course, the Welsh and Scottish and local elections in May. So the problem will come back, but he's bought himself a bit more time.
But he's good at that, isn't he? Rallying everybody around, getting people to all agree with him. I mean, what he did to Andy Burnham to scupper Andy Burnham's chances. I mean, as I hear, he didn't really need to vote, but he went in personally to vote to make sure that that didn't happen. But then at the end, he's no good at delivering it, is he? He managed to get everybody to rally behind him, but in reality, nobody's really ready to take over. And, well, who's going to take over if he went right now? No one's.
Well, I think that's probably one of the reasons why there wasn't a coup today. That nobody's really ready, and some people in a rather difficult position right now. I mean, Angela Rayner, the HMRC still haven't cleared her over whether over her stamp duty and whether she should be paying them a large sum of money. She's not ready to go. Wes Streeting's in a difficult position because he's regarded as having been close to Peter Mandelson, although he denies that. Andy Burnham is disqualified at the moment because he's not a member of Parliament. And so there aren't actually many contenders in the wings who are ready. Interestingly, one extra contender, who I think is quite credible, actually, has emerged in the last few days. Increasingly, Labour politicians are talking about the possibility, almost as a caretaker, a compromise candidate, of John Healey, the Defence Secretary, who's 66, so he's getting on a bit. Although I talk to somebody who's 67, and maybe he'll have an appeal. A bit like in the Catholic Church, traditionally it's said that young cardinals vote for old popes because it then gives them a chance of being pope later on. And maybe Healey would be a compromise that would appeal to the various factions and the various would-be leaders, because they can think, well, we'll let him do it for a few years, maybe take us into the election, and then I can stand properly a bit later. So there's a possibility. And, he's reckoned to have done a good job as Defence Secretary. And there are people on the left who like him because he did quite a lot of work in the trade union movement, press work and campaigns work for the TUC and one of Britain's biggest unions many years ago. So he could be a compromise candidate, but who knows right now? It's all sort of put on hold, really. But I don't think that Starmer can go to bed tonight thinking that he's got nothing to worry about.
No. Well, I guess John Healey's sort of non-offensive, isn't he? He's not really said anything silly at the moment, and he probably hasn't got any links to Peter Mandelson, he's hoping. Right, Michael Crick.
Well, I don't know. Most people in the Labour Party have had links to him at some point.
Oh, God. Anyway, Michael Crick.
I mean, people like him. That's the other thing. He's a friendly guy, and most people seem to like him, and he gets on well with journalists. Mind you, that's probably a bad sign. But there you are.
All right, Michael, thank you very much. Really good to talk to you. That is journalist and broadcaster Michael Crick. All right, well, joining me is my panel, journalist and broadcaster Benjamin Butterworth, US political commentator Jennifer Ewing, and also former Conservative MP and now Labour member Mark Logan. And also with me to discuss other stuff, we'll be going through all of that. But let's talk to the panel first. I'm going to start with you, Benjamin Butterworth. He will be going, in my view, at some point. Maybe not now, maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but soon.
I think the only person going on longer than Keir Starmer is Michael Crick, judging by that interview. Look, I mean, Patrick Maguire, the Times journalist, put it fantastically the other day when he said it's over, the question is when. I think you'd have to be a fool to not think that. The truth is that tonight we saw lots of Labour MPs, all the ministers and cabinet ministers putting out public declarations of support. But it's a house of cards, because ultimately the reason they're doing that is more to do with the fact that the candidates to replace him have said this is not the time, rather than a real depth of support for Keir Starmer as he is right now. And so I think there's no appetite to turn the page at the moment, because who would want to come in as a leader with the by-election happening, who knows what will happen in that, and then a likely bad result in the May local elections. And so for that reason, Keir Starmer will stay in place. And also, I might point out, if he gets to May and then there's a leadership election and he remains Prime Minister then, he'll be close fought as to whether he does longer as Prime Minister than Rishi Sunak did, which might be something in his own mind.
Or maybe he'll last longer than the lettuce. We've got a cabbage up there. But
don't cabbages last a while?
They do, they can do. That was
He'll be thrilled. He'll be so optimistic that you've chosen the cabbage.
That's sort of a mistake. What do you think? Mark Logan?
Well, I don't think it's all over quite yet. I mean, the Prime Minister, he has a massive mountain to climb, there's absolutely no doubt. But actually, I put it in perspective of 4 years ago, almost exactly to the week, we were going through all of this with Boris Johnson, something similar. I wrote a Times piece at the time, towards the end of January in 2022, saying that we needed honest leadership. And I think what the key difference is between Boris at that stage and with Keir Starmer is I do genuinely believe Keir Starmer is a man with integrity. He has good values, where Boris didn't. Boris, I tell you what, 4 years ago, it was deeply frustrating at the time because Boris had many things about him in which he could reach out to the nation, etc. And he was a convivial guy to be one-on-one with and have a bit of crack and a bit of fun with and whatever else. But he wouldn't change.
A bit of a crack with.
Yeah.
Have a bit of crack with.
Well, the Irish version of crack, which obviously means fun, C-R-A-I-C. So he was someone who he had potential at the time 4 years ago, but he wouldn't change. The leper wouldn't change its spots. And I think when you look at Keir Starmer, you're talking about a completely different beast in this regard. So I don't think it's over yet, but he is in a very difficult situation. I mean, there are some good things coming out of the Parliamentary Labour Party this evening, of course, in the Palace of Westminster, where people were saying he was coming out fighting. He did seem prime ministerial. He seemed like he still had a fight in him. So we'll see how the Gorton by-election goes over the next few weeks and the local elections coming up to that, and see how much you can corral the team behind him.
It wasn't the problem. We knew what kind of an animal Boris was. Nobody knows what kind of animal Keir Starmer is at all. He says one thing, does another, and then the next thing you know, he seems to be linked with all these dubious characters that seem to... I mean, what was the stuff going on with Phil Shining? That was a bit odd. He wrote a chapter in this book that was about the ECHR and how he could prosecute soldiers who've come back from war. Then Phil Shiner then suddenly ends up being done for fraud. I mean, and the whole Chagos deal, the Mauritian Prime Minister, who he seems to have some links with, suddenly is found with a suitcase of money and visas, UK visas, and all this stuff he seems to be connected with. But yet he comes across as pale and non-offensive. I'm not sure about Keir Starmer. Jennifer Ewing.
Yeah, first of all, I do agree with Benjamin that I think it's just a matter of timing. Now is not the right time. We saw that a little bit in the lead up to the US 2024 election when, they pushed Joe Biden off the cliff, and then they didn't really fight to have a primary because a lot of the good candidates said now's not the right time. The other thing with regards to Keir Starmer, I mean, sure, people can say he changes his mind or changes policies, but to me, and even in the statement today, it was like, I've never lost a fight. I've never done. He doesn't seem that patriotic to me. And I think that voters, and I'm not a Labour voter, but I think that voters will forgive somebody, having new information and changing their mind. But, if you don't come across as you want the best for your country, then I don't see how anyone's going to back you. So, I mean, you could see that people are, getting ready, regardless of what they say tonight. They're getting ready to challenge him.
I heard the speech the way you heard it.
Yeah.
Like he's saying, I've never won lost a fight. Well, hold on. Why should you be the one that is fighting? What are you fighting for? Is this about you personally? Or is it about the greater good of the country? Is it better for you to step aside and not fight? Why do you have to...
Exactly. That's exactly what I took from it, which is just so self-absorbed and almost narcissistic. You didn't hear a lot about the great British public or the people, and, we realize things aren't great right now in this country. I think I have the best ideas to get us back on track. That would have been totally acceptable, but it was... me.
It was like his sorry when he did say sorry about things, but then he sort of said, I'm sorry that I listened to him and that he lied to me. He lied to me. Oh, come on, please. Well, did you not read the room? Did you not read what everybody else knows? Right, well, with me now to discuss this is former Conservative Party MP Louise Mensch. Louise, welcome to the programme. I have to commend your leader, Kemi Badenoch, on an excellent dissection of Keir Starmer, because often I watch Prime Minister's Questions, and I call it Prime Minister's Questions, but no answers. But on this occasion, I think the reason people sighed was partly because Keir Starmer actually answered a question, but also the answer. Louise?
Look, Kemi played a blinder, and I think even her opponents, even Nigel Farage, if he's being fair, would have to admit that this is her moment. She, at PMQs, as you rightly say, after months of trying, finally got Keir Starmer to answer a question. And the problem for Keir Starmer is not that he believed Peter Mandelson's lies. The problem for him is that Peter Mandelson did not lie to him. His problem, as he admitted to Kemi, is that he knew perfectly well, because Peter Mandelson said so, that he'd continued this friendship with Jeffrey Epstein post the conviction for child prostitution. And when people describe Keir Starmer as a man of integrity, it actually makes me kind of angry. I mean, Boris Johnson is past history now, he's in the rearview mirror. But honestly, he was chucked out of office because people thought it was not right that he had a slice of cake and a warm glass of wine during lockdown, and he shouldn't have broken the rules. But let's not compare it to what Keir Starmer's just done, which is knowingly appoint a witting friend of a paedophile to our top diplomatic post. It was Harold Wilson, wasn't it, who said, a week is a long time in politics. And today we've seen that one single day can be a very long time in politics. I think that Keir Starmer is safe now until May for all the reasons that you've just laid out. Nobody wants, the runners and riders in the leadership contest do not want to have the disaster of the May local elections laid at their feet. They'd rather that Keir Starmer took the hit and that then they can go in. And I was interested that when you were listing challenges there, you didn't even mention Ed Miliband, who thinks that he can be Prime Minister. He's got a huge approval rating amongst the Parliamentary Labour Party and a huge disapproval rating amongst the voters at large. And I just wonder what the Labour Party are smoking, quite frankly, because almost nobody that they are floating, except John Healey, which is, I agree, would be a good, solid compromise candidate. Everybody's got problems, and that's why Keir Starmer is safe for now. But I don't think anybody in your studio or in the country expects him to be there in June. I certainly don't.
It was interesting as well, his speech and how he said he's come out fighting and all this sort of talk. I don't really know many people in this country that actually want him to stay, apart from his front benchers, because they don't want to lose their jobs, obviously, and that's why they've rallied around him. But is this for the greater good of the country? Would you rather that he left? Wouldn't it be better, you as a Conservative, leaving him in post because he's hated so much?
I don't think that politicians, if they really care about the country at all, even activists like myself now, should be thinking about it in those terms. What is the right thing for the country? Something, again, that hasn't been mentioned yet is that the bond markets had a wobble today. The price of government debt in the UK went up, which is what eventually chucked out Liz Truss, although not nearly to the same degree, because the financial markets do not want some highly left-wing nutter, quite frankly, to take over from Keir Starmer, who is seen, at least financially, as a moderate. Wes Streeting, the knives are out for Wes Streeting. I was thinking, you said all the Labour MPs are behind Keir Starmer. I thought, yes, they are, with knives in their hands, metaphorically speaking. And those knives are now out for Wes Streeting. But let's talk about Angela Rayner. It came out today that there was a website called Angela for Leader that was mistakenly published in January. So I don't know that this loyalty to Keir Starmer is anything more than skin deep. He's on borrowed time and all of us know it.
Yeah, they're all so sly. But is this not a bit like looking in the mirror, Louise? Do you remember what happened with the Tories? And this was quite bad,
I do remember what
wasn't
happened
it?
with the Tories. I do indeed. And, you know, whoever said at the beginning there that it was right that they shouldn't have endless changes of leadership, that is correct. And I think, again, that's why Keir Starmer has bought himself until May, until what is undoubtedly going to be a disaster for the Labour Party in the local elections, but not a step farther. That gives the runners and riders time to get their various houses in order. You know, going back to Miliband, I was really amused to hear him compare himself to Mamdani, the young, charismatic, extremely socialist mayor of New York City, where I live, because frankly, Miliband has the charisma of a dead haddock. And it will be interesting to see who emerges in the few months that Keir Starmer has bought himself today. I do think John Healey's a good shout. Where Streeting is a good shout. I would actually be pretty surprised if it is a left-wing Labour MP that takes over, because the markets are just not going to stand for it. And at the end of the day, they do tend to have the last word.
Well, I'm sure that Ed Miliband would tell you that he doesn't have the charisma of a damn haddock. Is that what you said? That's what you called him? Bless his heart.
Yeah, the charisma of a dead haddock. No, you're right. He's not that interesting.
And very, very busy, because I do have to go. But do you think that Anna Sawal was actually quite brave today, speaking out, because the others are too scared to tell the truth?
he did what he had to do. As a politician in Scotland, he had a good rating at the start of the year. With all of Keir Starmer's disasters, that's dropped down to 18%. He's terrified of a wipeout himself in the next set of elections that he faces. So maybe his hands were tied. But right now, he does look like a bit of an idiot, doesn't he? They always used to say in politics, you never ask a question that you don't already know the answer to. And he made the fatal mistake of not having canvassed enough support before he went out there.
Right.
So,
well,
the right thing to do, maybe not politically.
I actually think he was quite brave, and I'm actually quite pleased that somebody was prepared to speak their mind, because often it takes one person to be brave enough to be honest. Louise Mensch, thank you very much. She's a former Conservative MP. Right, let's pop off to America, as in Washington. Let's have a chat with the reporter at Reason magazine, Reem Ibrahim. Reem Ibrahim, she's moved to the States. Well. Is it better there? You're loving it?
It's great to see you, Nana. It is absolutely incredible here, I must say. It is so lovely and it's so nice, but I must say being in the studio alone is a bit sad.
Oh, it is a bit sad, but perhaps I might go over to Washington, D.C. and do the show from there.
Come, you'll be more than welcome. Come.
Reem, watching what's happening here in the UK from where you are, what are your immediate thoughts?
Well, my first thought is I think it's absolutely astounding that anybody could call the Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer, somebody that is of integrity. What has integrity? What is integrity when it comes to somebody that is saying fundamentally, I did know that this particular person, Peter Mandelson, had continued his friendship with a convicted paedophile, a friendship far after his conviction in the late 2000s. The idea that he already knew that information and he told Parliament that was the case, I don't think that this means that this man is of somebody with high levels of integrity. Now, one of the really interesting things about this, I think, Nana, is time and time again, Labour Party politicians very specifically have come out and said, you know, we are the good ones, we are the people that do good things. I think we saw this when it came to the Taylor Swift concerts, when they said, you know, yes, we did take those tickets, but no, it wasn't a bribe. And, you know, no, I think it's perfectly reasonable to accept nice things from companies. And then you saw the same thing again with Lord Ali, where Lord Ali was given a number 10 pass for providing all of these lovely dresses for Mrs. Starmer. And now we see this again with Peter Mandelson, where effectively what you're seeing is Labour Party politicians in government specifically thinking, we are the good guys, so therefore we can't do wrong. You know, the Tories do wrong, Reform do wrong, we can't do wrong. And I think this is fundamentally the problem here. These people are not nice people. If you are actually willing to accept somebody that is friends with a convicted paedophile, I don't believe that you have integrity.
Well, yeah, it does seem a bit odd that they are seeming to claim they have the moral high ground here. Reem, stay with us, of course. We shall see. We'll come back and forth with Reem. But right now, still to come in the Late Show Live.
The distraction needs to end, and the leadership in Downing Street has to change.
Oh, that was Keir Starmer's friend, apparently, although we know how Keir treats his friends. Remember, he was friends with, what's his name, Jeremy Corbyn? And Sawa, the Labour leader in Scotland, calling for him to resign. We'll discuss with the former Scottish MP. This is The Late Show Live on GB News. Join me, Nana Akweer, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun. No, he didn't say that, Dave. I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it?
Because
the failure is...
You're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Westminster, the ultimate clique. And you're fighting like rats in a sack. But here on the Camilla Tominey Show, we ask the questions the establishment media is too scared to ask. OK, let me ask you a straight question, because I know you're a straight-talking politician. Whether it's net zero, illegal immigration or law and order, nothing is off-limits. You had the power then.
Yeah, as I
And
say,
now you've lost it. That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show that's fearless. No, let me finish my question if you don't mind, because it is my show. Sundays at 9:30, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
So he can say whatever he wants.
A straight talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk now?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
In fact, has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I ever got up?
About 10. So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good evening and welcome back to The Late Show Live. Now, the leader of the Scottish Labour, Anna Sarwar, today called for Sir Keir Starmer to resign. Here's what
it isn't easy, and it's not without pain, as I have a genuine friendship with Keir Starmer. But my first priority and my first loyalty is to my country, Scotland. That's why the distraction needs to end and the leadership in Downing Street has to change. It is so obvious that we desperately need change in Scotland.
He later went on to say that he's a friend of Keir Starmer's. Well, with me now is the former Scottish National Party MP, Angus MacNeil. Angus, welcome to the programme. I actually happen to think that Anna Sarwar was, well, quite brave, really, because he went out on a limb. He wasn't guaranteed that people would fall into line. Some people would say that he was foolish, but, you know, he must have thought about the possibility that people wouldn't, but was still prepared to go forward and say what he thought.
I think he was extremely courageous indeed. He's fired the starting pistol and shot himself in the foot. I mean, courage and political brilliance don't always go hand in hand, and certainly didn't this afternoon for Anna Sarwar. I mean, he's revolution turned into a revolution of one. And the question now being asked in Scotland is who'll go first, Anna Sarwar or Keir Starmer? So it was political harry-carry this afternoon from Anna Sarwar. One political journalist in Scotland thought he'd be quite clever and say this is the end of the branch office tag for Labour in Scotland, only to see within the next hour Labour in Scotland getting slapped down by absolutely everybody in Westminster, and it turned out even the Westminster Scottish MPs weren't backing their Scottish. Yeah, but it was a day of utter catastrophe. They're third in the polls, and the question is, will they be fourth in the polls?
Well, yeah, but he stood up for what he believed in, knowing that that could be the case. He may have started the pistol and shot himself in the foot. That could be the case, but let's be honest, he's right, isn't he? Keir Starmer is linked with this sleazy Peter Mandelson, who he gave a top job to, knowing full well that this guy was sleazy. And just because his own MPs have now joined him to facilitate this whole thing, Anna Sarwar has said what we're all thinking. That's the height of sleaze. And actually, a lot of people listening and watching will be thinking, why on earth did those MPs get behind Keir Starmer, given what we all now know?
Well, as journalists pointed out to Anna Sarwar this afternoon in the in the general catastrophe of his attempt to finish off Keir Starmer. There's only a few months since Anas Sarwar himself was calling Peter Mandelson his friend. So now we have a situation where Anas Sarwar was questioning the judgment of Keir Starmer, and everybody's questioning the judgment of both. And perhaps, I think the question is maybe leading to an inevitable logic, and that is that both Anas Sarwar and Keir Starmer maybe should be or will be gone by the end of the week. So, as I said in the very beginning, he fired the starting pistol and shot himself in the foot. He may have both his feet lined up and the bullet went through both. Such was the damage that Anas Sarwar hit upon himself and his own team this afternoon. And I think all he did was solidify Labour around Keir Starmer. And, there'll be plenty of Machiavellian figures in politics of other parties who don't want to see Keir Starmer gone. A wounded leader is far better than a replaced leader. So Keir Starmer limping along and Anas Sarwar definitely limping with a bullet through both feet is not bad news for those political opponents of theirs in other parties.
Right.
Anas Sarwar has done everybody else except Labour a huge favour this afternoon.
All right, well,
Courageous or not.
Yeah, I see it differently, because I think that the fact that they're all prepared to rally around Keir Starmer, given what we all know, I think is a little bit sickening, really. And I'd like them to have
I think you're right.
I'd like to have them to have a bit more guts and be prepared to say, no, you've got bad judgment, you've made some very bad decisions, and the country can't tolerate it anymore. And the fact that Anas Sarwar, knowing full well that this could be the end of his political career potentially, I think makes him a bit more of a conviction politician than any of them, actually. Angus McNeil, I do have to leave it there. But it was
I think you're right in part of that, yeah.
Yeah, all right, it's really good to talk to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Let's speak to the panel. Right, I'm going to start with you. Jennifer Ewing, do you agree with me? I think he was courageous. He may have not rallied around enough support, but why are Keir Starmer's cabinet not brave enough to say no?
Well, if this is because they don't think he's an effective leader, then they need to find who's going to be the next leader. If this is about Mandelson, then Keir Starmer's not their only problem, right? I mean, we've heard today, I believe, that Wes Streeting has turned over his correspondence with Peter Mandelson. I can only assume that's to get it out of the way because he wants to run at some point. But I think we'll find that the buck does not stop with the Mandelson relationship, just with Morgan McSweeney and a few of the others. So was it brave? Sure. But was it politically astute? I don't know. I mean, I think they all look quite weak, right? The people, you either... Well, yeah, I don't know what they're going to do because I don't know what they want. I know what the conservative or the right-leaning parties, just sort of plug their nose and, if you were sick of the Conservative Party, you voted reform knowing you're going to get Labour. But what did Labour think they were going to get? I guess that's the answer. Are they disappointed in this man, or are they jumping on the bandwagon with this whole Mandelson thing?
Mark, I still think he was brave, even though the consequences may not be that positive to him. But people are still saying it's not a case of if, it's when.
I don't think he was brave, actually, what he's done. The brave thing would have been to, in this point leading up to now, is to be lobbying the Prime Minister, day in, day out. He'll have his WhatsApp, he'll be able to meet him in person.
He did speak to him before.
But if he has these issues with the Prime Minister, he should be saying to the Prime Minister, what is the change? I noticed the poster they have up in Scotland for Labour is the change that Britain wants and needs. So if he really does want the Prime Minister to change, he should give him the benefit of the doubt. And that's what I'm saying tonight, Nana. These next couple of months, we have to give...
him before he did it, so he didn't just do it. He called him.
He called him, but essentially he called him just to say, this is my decision and this is what I'm going to do.
Well, no, they had a conversation and Keir Starmer disagreed with his position, which is what he told us, and he then decided, well, he knows the Prime Minister disagrees. He didn't just do it and not tell him. He told him and then did it, because maybe he was just too disgusted with it all, even though he called Mandelson a friend. But he said it was in his capacity as US ambassador.
I think the timing of it was completely wrong and wrong-headed. And actually what we've seen today is very similar again, go back to January 2022, whenever Christian Wickford, who was the MP in the constituency beside me in Bury South, when he crossed the floor in the House of Commons, at that point everyone thought, oh, this is going to be a great thing for the Labour Party at the time. But actually it meant that there was this real sort of crowding round the Prime Minister back in January 2022. And I think the same thing has happened today. We've seen it not just with cabinet ministers, which you alluded to earlier, but across the party, the PLP itself. So there still is time, as I keep saying, the Prime Minister still has time, but he really, really needs to dig deep. He needs to answer actually what Jennifer was talking about earlier, is what's he in politics for? What's he doing it for? He has to actually
he's in
speak.
it because he's never lost a fight. He doesn't really care about why he's fighting.
Well, I'm glad he's a fighter. And I mean, there's one aspect, actually, I think we fail to see is the Prime Minister has done really well on the international stage for the UK.
God,
he has been good on the international stage.
China, that China
he's been
visit.
First class on China. Actually, I'm a China expert.
To China.
I spent 13 years in China. I'm fluent in Mandarin, Shanghai dialect. And actually, the President of the United States is going to China in 2 months' time, hopefully to do the biggest deal that he can ever do. So we don't listen to this. Do as I say, not as I do.
That's not what I meant.
Sorry.
The Prime Minister has done. He has done.
You've had enough time.
Please.
Honestly, he's obviously not met me before.
I'm against the Celtic.
Mark,
yes.
Listen. The Prime Minister runs away from many conflicts. He runs away from everything at home. It's very well known that's what they do. He's had 40 trips and he came back from China with 30 days free travel, or no, free visas, sorry. Most people can't even afford to go to China. And he came back with a piddly deal for some whisky distilleries and not very much more. Benjamin Butterworth.
I think Mark is quite the glutton for punishment to go from Team Boris Johnson to Team Keir Starmer. what a life choice.
Look, you've got an easier case to defend.
Look, with Anna Sarwar, actually, I don't know if it was brave so much as survival. If you were planning a political strategy, this is the only way forward. Unlike everyone in Westminster, Anna Sarwar's job is up to the public in May. And so he would have a situation whereby it looks like maybe Keir Starmer would limp on until after those elections, in which case it's in his self-interest to separate himself from the Westminster Labour Party. And if Keir Starmer goes before then Anna Sarwar looks like a leader. And so the people in the Scottish Labour Party and the Scottish voters, he would have gained absolutely nothing with them by backing Keir Starmer. There's a suggestion in the papers that a cabinet minister whose name rhymes with Les Wheating, according to the quote, was behind Anna Sarwar doing this. I actually think that's quite unlikely, because I don't think any of the candidates want the Prime Minister to fall right now. So, look, maybe it was brave, but it was definitely in his survival instincts.
Maybe it was in his survival instinct, but I think he was right. So whether you think he shot himself in both feet, is still limping on, I think, really, in truth, Keir Starmer and his association with Peter Mandelson and the knowledge that he had when he gave him the job, I think it's quite disgraceful, actually. And if it were me, I would be one of those that would come into the cabinet and just join in with this. And I think a lot of those cabinet ministers might start to look very foolish soon. But this is The Late Show Live. Still to come.
I'm here in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, where the Prince of Wales has touched down ahead of a busy few days of engagements, now looking overshadowed by the latest revelations in the Epstein.
All right, well, Jack Carlson will be with us soon. This is GB News. This is The Late Show Live.
I'm Michael Portillo. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster, the ultimate clique. And you're fighting like rats in a sack. But here on the Camilla Tominey Show, we ask the questions the establishment media is too scared to ask. OK, let me ask you a straight question, because I know you're a straight-talking politician. Whether it's net zero, illegal immigration or law and order, nothing is off-limits.
You had the power then.
Yeah, as I
and
say,
now you've lost it.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show that's fearless.
But no, let me finish my question if you don't mind, because it is my show.
Sundays at 9:30, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
No matter the state it's in, this is our nation. Join me, Jacob Rees-Mogg, for a genuine, honest discussion on where we have been, where we are going, and where we are with the people who set the direction. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News.
Britain deserves a newsroom that puts the facts and your voice first.
Well, and that's what you get on GB News. Lively debates, lively conversation.
And we're not afraid to hold power to account.
And each other. So join me, Andrew Pearce.
And me, Miriam Gates, for Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 on GB News.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk now?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
The fact that Trump made a good start, no.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I ever got up?
About 10.
So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m. only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
So he can say whatever he wants.
A straight talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m. weekdays here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Stephen Dixon, and thanks for joining us on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome to the Late Show Live. Now, Nigel Farage had a spring in his step earlier. He took to the stage in Birmingham, complete with fireworks and dry ice, to talk to Reform UK's optimistic plans for government. So with me now is Reform Councillor for Durham County Council, Darren Grimes. Darren, so in the midst of all of this, we got Nigel Farage talking about what he plans to do. And he says that Reform are ready, and they will be ready, because that's what everyone's saying. They're saying, listen, if you really plan to take over, and seeing, given what's going on with Keir Starmer at the moment, if there was a snap general election, would you be ready?
Absolutely, Nana. It's a great question. You know, that entire rally was premised around the line, time for reform. And I think the country is there with us. The country has decided that it's time for reform. But actually, you're right. We've got to do the hard yards ourselves and make sure we're ready on day one. But you did see in this rally today, the likes of Simon Dudley, who was the boss of Homes England, coming forward to actually say he's going to lead on housing policy. In all of these areas, we are managing to bring talent into the tent to actually make sure that we can deliver for the British people. Because I don't know if you remember, Nana, it feels like only yesterday that Keir Starmer was promising a prospectus for change. Well, that change seems to have been prioritisation for migrants coming here and a whole load of tax rises that nobody wanted or voted for that are leading to people losing their jobs and livelihoods. I mean, one of the lines, you know, that they attack people like me on is around scrapping the 2-child benefit cap. Well, Nana, I tell you this for free, it's no good doing that if the mum and dad at home are going to lose their jobs anyway, is it?
No, it really isn't. Do you think, and I'm asking everyone this, that Anas Sarwar was actually quite brave for standing forward, because all the Labour front benches have all rallied around Keir Starmer, but the whole thing is a bit seedy and horrible?
But look, ultimately, to go against your own party obviously takes an element of bravery, but apparently he was meant to do it alongside the Welsh First Minister, which didn't happen. Now, you know, whether or not that's more a conspiracy or another word begin with the C, Nana, who knows? We aren't privy to those conversations. But what I would say, though, is that when you've had everything going wrong with Labour in general, this Labour government, to do it now, to do it at this point and say Peter Mandelson is your way out, well, actually, what about everything else that's happened under this government? They have totally, I think, cheapened the brand of Prime Minister, despite the fact that they said they would be everything opposite to what Boris Johnson was. Well, they haven't been, Nana. It's been more of the same, and I think the British people are tearing their damn hair out.
Well, Keir Starmer's clinging on. He said that he's never lost a fight, so it's all about him.
Well, it's all about him. I mean, my goodness, if he's never lost a fight, I don't know who he's been fighting against, but they can't have been all that much up to it, because the man is a complete and utter dud. You know, it beggars belief to me that this is a man that used to represent people in a court of law as a very highly paid human rights lawyer, because I don't know about you, but I wouldn't fancy my chances if he was the one making the case for me in a court of law. I think ultimately he's totally let down everyone that voted for him on that prospectus of work, of wages, and a government that actually doesn't tax prosperity into the grave. Actually, they've done the complete opposite of that. They have managed to actually see growth collapse, inflation going up, and productivity actually downgraded, with, you know, many financial institutions saying that this country is in last chance saloon, that actually we are on a downward spiral with the Liberal left blob. And that is, I think, what Keir Starmer represents, Nana, I'm afraid.
All right, Darren Grimes, thank you very much. Let's get to Washington, D.C. and speak to political commentator Reem Ibrahim. Reem, so did you manage to catch much of Nigel's press conference? He told us that Reform UK are ready.
They are certainly ready, and I think what's fascinating about the political dynamics that we're now seeing on the right in Britain is it really is a battle for what it means to take control of conservatism. What does it mean to be on the right? Now, of course, with the last 14 years of Conservative governance, we saw the highest tax burden since the Second World War, enormous amounts of public spending, enormous amounts of waste, and of course, extraordinary regulations and red tape that are holding millions of businesses back. Now, what we have seen under this government, as Darren Grimes has just very eloquently put it, is more of the same. It is effectively the government taking the situation from bad to worse. Now, what's fascinating about the rise of Reform, and of course Farage's leader, is they are sort of proposing something ever so slightly different. When it comes to substantial policy announcements, though, I'm not fully 100% convinced. I mean, the two-child benefit cap aspect of it is one thing. The energy policies have all been pretty big government, and of course Farage did go back on those £90 billion of tax cuts that he promised at the 2024 election. So I think the jury is still out. I do think what's interesting about the dynamic here, though, Nana, is there obviously is a different choice. People are sick and tired of the same managed decline. They are sick of the government increasing taxes on jobs, making it so much harder for businesses to employ people. Young people across Great Britain cannot find work. People are sick and tired of the government telling them they can and cannot do certain things. And I think the rise of Reform is a consequence of those changes.
All right, Reem Ibrahim will be back with you, but stay with us. This is a GB News, still to come on The Late Show Live. Buckingham Palace has tonight released a statement supporting a police investigation into the disgraced Andrew Mountbatten as Prince William touched down in Saudi Arabia. This is The Late Show Live, only on GB News.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News, the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk now?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
The fact is Trump made a good start, no.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I ever got up? About 10.
So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/your say. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/your say, because GB News is your channel, Britain's News Channel.
Join me, Nana Akweer, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun. No, he didn't say that, Dave. I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power? Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber. Get behind the headlines with Chopper's political podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics. We'll see where this ruling takes us. These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's political podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
No,
isn't it? Because the failure is...
You're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Dubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good evening, welcome to The Late Show Live. Now, the Prince of Wales has arrived in Riyadh for a historic trip to the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. GBN reporter Jack Carson has the latest.
The Prince of Wales has touched down here in Saudi Arabia on what is a really important trip. But as he begins his official engagements here, both His Majesty the King and Prince William have expressed their deep concern about the latest revelations about the conduct of Andrew Mountbatten Windsor that has been seen in the Epstein files, as well as expressing their thoughts for the victims. This is a huge, significant trip for the Prince of Wales and for His Majesty's government, as both aim to deepen diplomatic ties here in the region. But events back home look like they're overshadowing what is a packed few days of engagements. Shortly after he arrived, the Prince was met by His Royal Highness, the Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, as they took a private tour around the UNESCO World Heritage Site at Taraif. Now, at Taraif is a remarkable example of Najdi architecture that flourished back in the 18th century, and he got a private tour of that by the Crown Prince before then going into a private audience and private dinner where they discussed, of course, many of the different things that the Prince of Wales holds personal to him, but also, of course, the incredible importance that His Majesty's government are also putting on this trip too. We know back in October, a £6.5 billion trade deal was announced, so the government wanting to deepen the ties between these two countries, both now in the present and the future to come. What's to come for the Prince of Wales over the next few days? It's a busy few days of engagements. He'll engage with women's football, here esports, as well as his own personal projects like sustainability and the environment, as once again the Prince of Wales takes a big step on the global stage.
So that was Jack Carson earlier. Right, so just coming to you, Benjamin Butterworth, how do you think the royal family are faring at the moment, given what's going on?
Well, I think that this is probably the biggest threat to the institution of the royal family in at least since the abdication, if not since before that. Because the real problem, and I think the reason that the King has come out alongside Catherine and William today and talked about the Epstein issue, is because there is a sense in the public that there is one rule for Andrew Mountbatten Windsor and whether or not he is investigated on these allegations, which he denies, and another for everybody else. The idea that that could take hold, that he is not being treated equally, I think is incredibly toxic for them. But also there have been years of these allegations swirling, including before they were in the mass knowledge of the public. The US broadcaster ABC tried to do an interview with an accuser many years ago, and the palace, under Her late Majesty, said, no, if you do that, there'll be no access to the royal family again. That is a really toxic way for them to have behaved, and they know it won't last.
But I guess I can understand why they may have done that, Mark.
I mean, I think just going specifically actually to the footage in Saudi Arabia, I do think that the Prince of Wales, he's been a fantastic ambassador for the UK overseas. I know, Jennifer, we touched upon China earlier. I did have the joy about 10 years ago of welcoming, at that time, the Prince to Shanghai on a big visit he paid 2 free days, and he was absolutely first class. But This whole shenanigans over Andrew, I mean, right when we go back to the BBC, the now infamous interview at the time, right up until today, it's absolutely despicable. We have to get to the bottom of it as soon as possible.
Yeah, well, we'll come back to all of that because there's a lot still to come here on GB News. We'll be discussing all things forward and, of course, that big news that, as we know, Keir Starmer is clinging on. But stay tuned. This is GB News. Remember, you can catch us live on gbnews.com and let me hear your thoughts. gbnews.com/your say. My panel will be with me all the way through till 2 a.m. Do not go anywhere.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it?
Because
the failure is...
You're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akweer, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun. No, he didn't say that, Dave. I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/your say. There, you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/your say, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster, the ultimate clique. And you're fighting like rats in a sack. But here on the Camilla Tominey Show, we ask the questions the establishment media is too scared to ask. OK, let me ask you a straight question, because I know you're a straight-talking politician. Whether it's net zero, illegal immigration or law and order, nothing is off limits.
You had the power then.
Yeah, as I
and
say,
now you've lost it.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show that's fearless.
No, let me finish my question if you don't mind, because it is my show.
Sundays at 9:30, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight-talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Tom Harwood. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good evening, this is GB News. I'm Nana Akweer on The Late Show Live tonight. Plenty to cover. We're on resignation watch for the Prime Minister, and we'll also touch on the controversial Super Bowl half-time show. This is The Late Show Live. There are no breaks this hour. So you've got a full hour, no interruptions, wonderful. Welcome if you just tuned in. Joining me this evening is my panel, journalist and broadcaster Benjamin Butterworth, US political commentator Jennifer Ewing, and in Washington, D.C., political commentator Reem Ibrahim. Reem, thank you very much for joining us tonight. Right. All credit, though, to Anas Sarwar. He's the leader of the Scottish Labour Party. He's the only person who's prepared to stand up against the Prime Minister, the most unpopular Prime Minister ever.
The situation in Downing Street is not good enough. There have been too many mistakes. They promised they were going to be different, but too much has happened. Have there been good things? Of course there have, many of them. But no one knows them and no one can hear them because they're being drowned out. That's why it cannot continue.
Now, before his move, Anna spoke to Keir Starmer. Anna was clearly disgusted by the morals that were sacrificed. Keir purports to be a great protector of women and girls, so knowing what he already knew, that should have excluded Peter Mandelson from any position of power. So why should Anna Sarwar be the one that stands down? I think he's brave. Up till the moment he spoke up, only Pat McFadden was prepared to hand his hat on the Keir Starmer hook. More than can be said for Keir's cabinet, who gradually, sheepishly began rallying around their leader during and after the speech, and no other reason than to save their own skins. Anna stood up at great risk to himself and said what he thinks, what the country thinks, and he's prepared to stand by it. Well, this evening, he told Labour MPs, Keir Starmer told Labour MPs, I have won every fight I've ever been in. I fought to change the Crown Prosecution Service so it better served victims of violence against women and girls. I fought to change the Labour Party to allow us to win an election again. People told me I couldn't do it, and then they gradually said, you might just get over the line. We won with a landslide majority. Every fight I've been in, I have won. In a meeting where he confirmed his determination to cling on to power. But sadly, Keir Starmer is completely tone-deaf, thinking about himself and not what the country actually needs. Some are saying that Annas is in cahoots with Wes Streeting. I don't think so. Keir Starmer's position is untenable, and it is clear that those who are rallying around him are prepared to forgo their moral compass in order to keep their jobs. They'll do anything to stay in power. The MPs rallying the country will not forget their actions. I have a newfound respect for Anna Sarwar, country first. Right, well, let me know your thoughts at gbnews.com/your say. Do you think that perhaps he made a terrible move, or do you actually think that he was brave? Let's get the reaction from my panel. Joining me, political commentator Benedict Spence, who'll be joining me shortly. But right now, Benjamin Butterworth and also Jennifer Ewing. Brilliant. Right, and of course, Reem Ibrahim. How could I forget you out there in Washington, D.C.? All right, Jennifer Ewing, I'm coming to you first. I say he was brave. I've been told that he shot himself in both feet. But I look at the cabinet and say, well, they were weak. They weren't prepared to say what the nation is thinking.
OK, what I'd be curious to know is what were these people doing when Mandelson was first put up as the U.S. ambassador? I remember sitting in this studio saying it's a terrible choice. It doesn't, jive with the whole Trump administration, which is a lot less, long-term diplomats and Washington insiders, and it's more outsiders. So I thought he was a terrible choice to begin with. I don't know, what did these guys all say at the time? Or are they just like, jumping on the bandwagon now that, the wheels have sort of come off?
Reem Ibrahim.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with that. I think that Peter Mandelson himself was always a bad appointment from the get-go. There's also the fundamental point here that if the government weren't already aware of the Epstein links, then very clearly there is something wrong with British intelligence. I find it astounding to think that if the government weren't aware of this, if the government, the MI6, whoever, did not brief the Prime Minister on these links, there is something fundamentally wrong with British intelligence.
Now, I thought it was very, very telling, because when Morgan McSweeney left, in part of his resignation letter or statement, he said that he wasn't completely in charge of the vetting and he didn't oversee the due diligence, which to me sounds like... Exactly. Yeah. Which to me sounds like he's saying, I've been thrown under the bus. Benjamin.
Well, look, this idea that the friendship with Epstein was unknown is wrong. It was known, it was publicly known, and yet at the time of the appointment, very few people indeed, whether in Westminster or in the media, raised any issue about Peter Mandelson being put in that job because he had known Epstein. Indeed, I think the bit that Keir Starmer can't say is that that was part of the reason why he put him in the job. The logic was put the snake in the snake pit. And of course, we know from some of these Epstein files that Peter Mandelson had attended a dinner at Jeffrey Epstein's house alongside Donald Trump and Bill Gates and a Google founder. And so it was no accident that they made the decision. I think maybe Keir Starmer would have commanded some more respect if he'd been honest about that. And the truth is that that's probably what those around Keir Starmer thought as well.
Was joining me.
But is that integrity?
Oh, sorry, go on, Ray. Sorry, go on.
I mean, I was going to say, does that suggest somebody of integrity? The fact that if this is true, if Benjamin, what you've said is true, that the Prime Minister actually appointed Peter Mandelson knowing about these Epstein links on purpose in order to what? Sort of add a jab to the President? I mean, what are we talking about here?
It just sounds a bit ridiculous, really, that you would, just because you all maybe know each other and you've spoken together, that, well, he would be a good person for the job. That doesn't fly with me, especially if he's got links to a paedophile. Well, let's get the thoughts of political commentator Benedict Spence on this issue. Benedict, your thoughts?
Good evening. I mean, it's... broadly speaking, we're at a weird stage now, aren't we, where the Prime Minister is not really the Prime Minister anymore. Whether or not he's aware of it, or whether or not even members of his party are aware of it, is slightly beside the point. It is the case that he's not the Prime Minister. It's simply a case that any rival currently doesn't quite have the motivation, the gumption, or the organisation to challenge him yet. I think Anas Sarwar either has done this to cover his own back, because of course he's not looking too good currently in Scotland. His numbers are not doing too good, and perhaps he's slightly bolted early. Or he's done so believing that there would be support from somebody else, perhaps within the cabinet, or perhaps without it, who was got to and who was spooked early. But the reality is there's no good point going forward here for the Prime Minister. There is nothing to look forward to, really. They're going to lose the upcoming by-election. They're going to do very, very poorly, you would imagine, at the local elections. And, to go back to the Mandelson-Epstein issue, there's nothing to say that this is the line drawn under it. There's everything to suggest, frankly, that more revelations could come out in the future. And if you're sort of sitting here, having seen everything else that has come out, would you really bet against that? Now, of course, he might say, as has been touched on here, that these were decisions that were made by other people, but ultimately the buck has to stop with him. He is the Prime Minister, and it is not as if ambassador to the United States, especially with Donald Trump being the president, is a minor job. This is the sort of role that the Prime Minister should have complete oversight of if you're actually putting a political appointee, rather than simply a career diplomat, into the role. None of it really stacks up, and I think everybody understands his reputation is shot, his credibility is shot. It's now simply a question of the Labour Party finding somebody that they trust enough to maybe take over, which, to be honest, it doesn't look as if even any of the actual candidates have much faith in themselves at this moment.
Well, from Anas Sarwar's perspective, what he's saying is that the mess that is Westminster is actually destroying his chances in Scotland, because people are watching that and going, oh, my God. And so you may say that his chances are scuppered, but perhaps what I see from what he was saying was it's the mess of Westminster that has put people off the Labour Party, and he's heading it in Scotland, and he's detaching himself from it immediately. Jennifer, I see you nodding or shaking your head. Your thoughts?
Yeah, no, I think that makes sense. And I go back to the point that I was making earlier, is like, I think the Labour Party got off really easily at the last election because the right was imploding and they were going into different little factions. And so many voters I know who had been previously Conservative voters voted Reform knowing they'd get Labour. And they were okay with that because they didn't want to reward this sort of Conservative government. But what was Labour trying to do? Was Keir Starmer really the best candidate they could come up with? I mean, to me, as a non-Labour voter, he did not seem to be. And here we are, it's not even, been very long. So they don't have, who is the next person? I hear Benedict said, I don't think we've heard the end of these, these Mandelson, or excuse me, the Epstein files, which is true. I mean, as somebody that's been, reading them quite in detail, there is a lot more that will come out. And I heard today that Wes Streeting has even turned over his correspondence with Mandelson, assuming that eventually, if he is to, put his hat forward, that will be looked at. So he wants to get that out of the way.
Well, he put forward the 6 months before Mandelson's appointment. Maybe we could go a little bit further back. Benjamin.
Well, look, I think the scale of criticism of Keir Starmer and of Labour on this decision is actually out of all proportion. What we know today about Mandelson's links, among other serious accusations, makes him obviously ineligible and clearly deeply unethical. But what we knew at the time, the overwhelming majority of Westminster and of the media thought that it was a rational decision. The reaction was not to say that the link to Epstein made him ineligible. The Tory leader and leadership said not a single word. And so how can it be this revisionism?
That's what we knew. We did not know. The government absolutely were aware of this fact. The Prime Minister said so in Parliament. They were aware.
Also,
yes, you're right. The media
Everybody
didn't know.
knew. It was
People
public
in Westminster
knowledge.
didn't know. No, but this is the point. The Prime Minister should have been, if he was not briefed on all of the links and what this actually looked like in the first place. I think that says a lot about British intelligence and the incompetence within the British government. But that point aside, the government and the Prime Minister absolutely was aware of this. So the question
so
is,
was everybody,
why
Reem,
wasn't
and I
it
don't remember
considered?
you saying that this was such a fatal mistake. The media didn't say it,
No,
Westminster didn't say it, Nigel Farage did not say it.
I said it. No, these particular links actually weren't specifically known. The fact that Peter Mandelson maintained that relationship, the hardcore evidence of the fact, wasn't known publicly. The Prime Minister said in Parliament that Mandelson told him it was true. That's the fundamental point here. The Prime Minister was aware of it. He said he wasn't, and then he said he was. That's the point here. This is not a man of integrity. It is a man that made a political appointment for somebody that had a close friendship with a convicted paedophile. That, I'm sorry, I put full blame at the Prime Minister.
Well, I don't blame you. I think he's right. Benedict Spence, I think you're right, Reem.
Well, I mean, to sort of sit here and say that none of the mainstream sort of political figures or journalists in the country raised it as an issue, I don't think necessarily means that it wasn't, because frankly, none of them have a very good track record of getting anything right in the last couple of years. You know, we've all known about the grooming gang scandal in this country for over a decade, but it took a very long time for it to actually become a mainstream issue. But I think actually what Reem is saying is right. What we're discussing here is the Prime Minister suggesting one thing and then clarifying another, and ultimately the buck has to stop with the Prime Minister. If he is, as he says, this sort of great man of integrity, then you have to accept that the buck stops with you, and then you have to fall on your own sword. What you don't do is you start slowly shedding people around you in a desperate bid to stay on. That is what weak Prime Ministers do, or Prime Ministers without integrity. Do I hear Boris Johnson anywhere? You know, that's what people accuse Boris Johnson of doing, and they said it's because he lacked integrity. Well, Keir Starmer is doing the exact same thing, and I would say, actually, that people would probably have a lot more respect for Keir Starmer, just as they would have probably had a lot more respect for Boris Johnson if, at the top of the circus, that person had gone, yeah, I dropped the ball, I was wrong to have done so, I will be resigning as Prime Minister, I will stick on, obviously, to oversee, you know, a leadership contest, but this was something that I cannot, you know, in any good conscience, maintain my position, having overseen. Then I think a lot of us would be sitting here going, do you know what, fair play to Keir Starmer, man of integrity, but the fact of the matter is, right now, we all know he's twisting the arms of cabinet ministers, he's throwing people under the bus, his chief of staff has gone. It just doesn't look like a particularly strong man, and that's why I go back to what I said at the very start. He's not actually the Prime Minister anymore, he's just got the title, but we all know it's over.
Well, and I'm just come back to something that Reem pointed out, that the security services don't seem to be that great. I mean, who remembers Abdel Fattah? He had tweeted that, you know, some really dodgy social media posts, and Keir Starmer welcomed him to the UK, having even
You know what's crazy, Nana? So he was Egyptian, right? I'm half Egyptian. I was talking about this with my family because I just thought it was nuts. The Egyptian government saw him as a terrorist and did not want him out of prison. And they basically were forced to, by the British government, by the Prime Minister, to release this man and send him back to Britain. It's insane.
See, there's a case that the security services really should have known this. Keir Starmer shouldn't really be tweeting that he's really welcoming him. He said he was delighted by his arrival. And why would you be delighted for the arrival of a terrorist? And then he apologised later because he didn't, I didn't know that. And you would think that he would. So the fact that he was, you know, all welcoming to somebody who really he shouldn't have been just goes to show how good those security services seem to be, or how good his briefing is, or whoever's supposed to be giving him information. Benedict Spence, thank you very much for joining us. That is Benedict Spence, political commentator. Thank you for your thoughts. Wow. So it's been an incredible day in politics. In fact, an incredible year in politics, and it's only, what, are we just in week 6 of this year, or week 5? Well, listen, you may have heard some discussion around the Gorton and Denton by-election, which is taking place on Thursday, the 26th of February. Now, the by-election was triggered after the resignation of Andrew Gwynn. So the Conservatives have announced their candidate, Charlotte Cadden. Hannah Spencer is the Green Party's candidate. Jackie Piercy has been announced as the Liberal Democrats candidate. Matt Goodwin was announced as Reform UK's candidate. Angelique Stogia is the Labour Party's candidate. Advance UK have announced Nick Butley as their candidate. Sebastian Moore is the Social Democratic Party candidate. The Rejoin EU Party announced Joseph Amicia as their candidate. There's also Dan Clark from the Libertarian Party UK, Sir Oink-a-Lot from the monster-raiding Looney Party, and Hugo Wills is the candidate for the Communist League election campaign. Well, with me now is the former Liberal Democrat councillor Matthew Hulbert to get his thoughts on this breaking news, all this news. Matthew Hulbert, aren't you tired of all of this, the ongoings, the goings-on, it's the shenanigans in Parliament? It's only been, what week are we, week 5, week 6 of this year?
I know, what a year for politics already. So good to be with you in the early hours. Yeah, what a week for politics, what a year, what a day. I mean, so many things coming out today. But I can't help but think that whilst Labour is doing all the navel-gazing and focusing in on itself, it's not looking outwards. It's not looking outwards to folks who can't pay the bills. It's not looking outwards to folks who are waiting multiple hours for ambulances when they fall ill. And when is this government going to start focusing again on the people's priorities?
Now, you see, that is the question, isn't it? When are they going to start looking at what's going on in this country? We have a real problem with illegal migration. We have a real problem with where to put migrants. They've been talking about giving houses, council houses, to people who've come here via dinghy, which is very irritating for the British people. They've been housing people in barracks, and people are going to be able to roam around freely without us even knowing who they are. We have problems with so many things, and yet they are now internalising and eating themselves from the inside out, just like the Tories.
Yeah, they are. And look, you know, I heard Benjamin's point. Benjamin is someone I have a lot of time for. I'm going to admit here right now that, yeah, someone has to, right? I'm going to admit here right now that I'm sure when the Peter Mandelson appointment was made that I welcomed it at the time. And I'm a bit fed up of people who did that, trying to now claim that they've never heard of the man and never want anything to ever do with him. I thought it was a pretty wise appointment, given the person who is in the White House at the moment. Now, I accept that I was completely wrong to have welcomed his appointment, and he never should have been appointed in the first place. I think when you get things wrong, you should say so very, very clearly. I also think that you shouldn't throw the staff under the bus. You know, I'll say Margaret Thatcher was right about one thing. I disagree with her on almost everything, but she was right when she said that advisers advise and ministers decide. And if Morgan McSweeney has to go because of what he advised, then what does that say about the man who took that advice and acted on it? And that's Keir Starmer.
Well, he said he's going to fight, and he's never lost a fight, so he's going to carry on. Do you think that's a little bit sort of selfish? Because really he should be thinking about what is best in the country's best interest, rather than him clinging on when he clearly, well, he says he's got a mandate to lead, but everything he's done hasn't really been in his mandate anyway.
Well, I mean, the interesting thing about his claim to have a mandate is that Labour got, what, 30-some-odd% of the vote. I think that's to do with our dreadful voting system, but I would say that I'm a Liberal Democrat, and we always have to mention the voting system. But yeah, I mean, I think this guy is on his way out, and it's not a question of if but when. And I think the wagons continue to circle. Yes, he saw out the day, he saw out yesterday now, and he may well see out today. He may well see out this week. But in May, Labour are going to not win back Scotland. They're going to lose for Wales for the first time in a century, and they're going to lose across England. How on earth can he stay on after that?
Well, Benjamin, he's got plenty of time for you, so what were your thoughts on that?
Well, look, I think it's right to point out the revisionism that so many people have sort of establishment amnesia to what they said at the time. I think Keir Starmer isn't going anywhere very soon. We've seen that with so many MPs backing him. And actually, after this week, Parliament goes on to recess. and then you have the by-election, and so I think that would be the next inflection point where it's possible. But all of the people who might replace Keir Starmer have a self-interest in letting this play out a little longer. Angela Rayner, because her HMRC woes have not yet been resolved, she hasn't been cleared, it's still under investigation, and Wes Streeting, because he probably wants to see the attention and the link to Mandelson quieten down before he launched a bid. And so I think that Keir Starmer will probably still be the Prime Minister in the first week of May.
I think you... I don't know. I don't know whether he can survive. Jennifer, do you think he can survive that long?
I think he quite possibly could have survived this, Mandelson, if he was doing well in other areas, you know. But I don't know any British people, even if they are Labour voters, of this 36%, you know, that voted, that's happy with the way the country's going. Nobody's happy, left, right, centre, Green. So if he had been doing a lot of things correctly, say, you know, when Trump screws up, people are like, oh, but I love that he closed the border, or I love that he's deregulated, I love that we're Joe, baby Joe. You know, at least there's some real issues behind it that people say, you know what, I'll let this slide. I think the Prime Minister would have survived this, as a lot of people will survive this, because the Epstein files, you know, are quite a tangled web. If there were people backing him thinking, hey, he's had some great policies go through and we're really happy with his leadership so far, so keep him on.
Do you think that would have been the case for him, or do you think he's just a dead duck, really?
I personally think that it's it's a question of what this looks like in the future. I mean, the problem with the Prime Minister at the moment is, as has just been said, you know, the record he has had in government has been rather abysmal. We've had U-turns after U-turns. I think part of the problem is, when we're looking at the economy, you know, public spending as a proportion of GDP is now at about 45%. That means we've seen tax rises last year. We're going to see tax rises again this year, and the year after, and the year after, until the government finally decide to reduce public spending, which won't happen because it's politically so impossible. The more political weight, or the more political ambush that you remove yourself from, the harder it is to make the difficult decisions. And all that this has done, the Mandelson fiasco, if you want to call it that, all that this has done is reduce and thin out that particular amount of politics or political weight that they have. So the difficult decisions can't happen. The country is just going to get worse and worse. And I do think we are going to see reform in the next election. I'm not saying it's what I want, but I am saying I think it's going to happen, because people are sick and tired of the current actual managed decline that is currently facing this government. So, you know, perhaps Starmer will be able to cling on. Perhaps it'll mean the fact that lots of ministers want this to be the case. Lots of members of Parliament do not want a snap election. They do not want an early election. They want to remain in their comfortable seats. We've also got to remember the majority that Labour have is very, very shallow. Lots and lots of Labour MPs won their seats by a very narrow margin. I think lots of them think they're in a vulnerable position. Any by-election I don't think will be won by this government, and so I do think that we're going to see some very, very interesting aspects of this play out over the next few years.
All right, well, let's just do a little game. It'll be called Name the U-turn, the scandal, or a minister, somebody who's been fired, and let's see how long it takes us to run out of them. So I'm going to go with Freebiegate. Benjamin, we'll do it in order. Benjamin, you're next.
What I name?
You can name an MP that's been fired, a scandal or whatever. Let's see how long it takes us. Sue Gray. You're next.
That Centre to Counter Digital Hate that Morgan Sweeney was in charge of was a disaster.
I think the Angela Rayner issue was one of, I think her sacking was absolutely hilarious. Seeing the sort of hypocrisy around tax evasion from the very people that are supposed to be pro-tax the rich.
Well, I too was going to say Angela Rayner, so Reema's rather stolen mine there. But I just want to make this other point, which is that we talk of Wes Streeting as a potential candidate, but we have to remember he only just won his seat. I think it was 500 votes. And, you know, in these texts to Mandelson that were released today, I know it's a little while back, but Wes Streeting said that he's toast in terms of the next election.
Well, we shall see. Well, we'll come back and carry on playing that game. Matthew Hulbert, thank you very much. He's a former Liberal Democrat councillor. Right, well, still loads to come on The Late Show Live. We'll be looking at the Super Bowl half-time show from last night. But first, let's get an update with your weather.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Boxed Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
Hello, good morning. Welcome to your latest GB News weather update. Another dull and damp day to come for many of us. Some heavy showers pushing into the southwest, and it will be a pretty breezy afternoon across the south and the north as well. Now, the rain's going to be quite persistent for many northern areas, particularly across eastern Scotland. That's where there's a rain warning in force from today all the way through until the end of Wednesday. A drier slot of weather will push through across parts of central areas of England, into northern England into this afternoon. Still a lot of cloud around and a risk of some drizzly rain, and into the southwest some heavy showers moving in from the Atlantic into this afternoon. Pretty mild afternoon in the south, but a chillier feel further north with that wind coming off the North Sea into this evening. Those winds remain pretty strong actually across northern areas into this evening, and further persistent heavy rain bring a risk of travel disruption across parts of Aberdeenshire and Angus as well as Fife. Further south, we'll see a lot of cloud around through this evening, still some persistent rain across parts of Northern Ireland, into many northwestern areas of England as well. Very few of us seeing any dry weather throughout Tuesday. In fact, see those heavy showers moving into the south and west. They'll continue to feed in from the southwest throughout tonight with those strong westerly winds as well. Some drier slots of weather, but I think another pretty unsettled and damp night to come. Now, across southern areas, we've still got this westerly wind, so it's going to be another fairly mild night across many southern areas, but a colder feel starting to move in from the north. Frost free though, because we've got a lot of cloud and rain around, but some of that rain will fall as snow over the highest ground of the Grampians through Wednesday morning. Still a rain warning in force through Wednesday for much of northeastern Scotland. Another very damp day to come for many northern areas in particular. Actually, across southern areas there will likely be a drier and perhaps a sunnier interlude of weather through the afternoon, but still another mild feel. Strong winds though moving up from the south, and heavy rain never too far away.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Boxed Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
Well, let's delve into some of the main stories on the front of tomorrow's newspapers. Let's start with the Daily Telegraph. On the front of that, Streeting accused of number 10 coup. I don't think so, really, do you? I think that's a bit too clever for him. Not that he isn't clever, but I don't think he's setting that up. In the Metro, my first loyalty is country. That is from Anas Sarwar after his speech at 2:30 earlier today. In The Guardian, I'm not prepared to walk away, embattled Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer tells his MPs. Front cover of the Mail leads with Cabinet bounced into giving PM stay of execution, which goes with the presumption that perhaps he will be going, but it's a case of when. In The Times, the Prime Minister comes out fighting as Cabinet falls in line. On the front cover of the Express, that leads with resign now. Prime Minister on the brink has called to go Mount. Sun, on the front cover of the Sun, the King will help cops on Andy. The Mirror leads with the King will help police. And the Eye, mercy of Cabinet keeps Starmer in power as endgame nears. Right, well, with me is the former Conservative MP Neil Parish. Some quite daunting headlines, but some people actually believe that Sir Keir Starmer could actually ride this out. Neil Parish, do you think he's on the ropes?
He's definitely on the ropes, Nana, but I think he could ride it out. I think the trouble is the Labour Party is damned if they do and damned if they don't, because, if you look back at the history of the Conservative Party, every time we changed leader, it didn't really increase our popularity. And so I think he is, he's a finished Prime Minister, but of course if he won't go, he's got total package. And so, it's quite amusing really watching it from afar. all the cabinet trotting out and being very supportive of the Prime Minister. Well, of course, they're supporters of the Prime Minister while he's there because he can sack them all just like that. So, I mean, it means absolutely nothing. And I think the trouble is, when the Commons Committee starts looking into how Mandelson was actually put in place as ambassador in the first place, I shall be very surprised if there's not stuff there that really implicates Starmer in the real nitty-gritty of the decision. I think that's his problem. It's just not going to go away, is it? It's like former Prince Andrew. It doesn't go away from him. Now, Starmer's not implicated in Epstein and what Epstein did, but of course, naturally, Mandelson is. And of course, he endorsed Mandelson very much. And you've got all those lovely smiling pictures, haven't you, of Starmer walking around with Mandelson. It's going to be very difficult to shake off.
Yeah, and he does that thing where he goes, but to us, he's just Peter. That little comedy moment, probably quite a relaxing moment for Keir Starmer, but he wouldn't have known that him showing a little bit of personality in that way was going to bite him in the behind. And as I hear, it won't go away, but he will probably go away, won't he? Travelling somewhere to try and make us forget about this in the hope that when he comes back, there'll be some other thing that he has to deal with on the global stage. Reem, a lot of people are saying that Keir Starmer's really successful on the global stage. Do you think he is?
No, I really do not think that he is extraordinarily successful on the global stage. If anything, it looks as though he is trying to escape all of the domestic issues he is facing in Great Britain by hopping on a plane and leaving the mess. I do think what's interesting is the relationship he's been able to build with world leaders has sort of been on the back foot. The question of whether or not his relationship with President Donald Trump over here has actually been affected by all of this, I think is a really interesting one, because at the beginning it seemed as though Trump and Starmer had a pretty good rapport. Trump was quite good at sort of ensuring that that relationship had been built. He was rather nice to Peter Mandelson, if we'll remember correctly. During the sort of announcement in the White House, you had Peter Mandelson there, and Trump did say things like, "Oh, I just love his accent." So the relationship with Sir Keir Starmer was always rather positive. I do think after the Greenland fiasco and after everything that has happened subsequently, the relationship between, well, the special relationship between the US and the UK has fallen ever so slightly sour. And I don't think that Sir Keir Starmer really appears as though he is a strong world leader. I think that we were right to mention earlier in the programme the trip to China, where he came back with very, very sort of minuscule supportive sort of trade measures that weren't necessarily going to do very much, but of course did open up questions about the British government's relationship with the Chinese government, again a hostile power. So to answer your question, Nana, no, I don't think that he comes across as particularly strong on the world stage. I think it looks as though he's trying to run away from his domestic issues.
Jennifer, I notice you nodding.
Well, first of all, President Trump is actually, when he's face to face with somebody, any world leader, whether it's Prime Minister Starmer or whether it's Erdogan, he's very, very cordial, right? He's respectful. He sort of respects the office. However, I think even before this Mandelson-Epstein issue, there were a lot of ways in which the US-UK special relationship was diverging, and whether it's free speech and censorship, whether it's the uncontrolled immigration that the United States sees the United Kingdom, participating in front of, think it's very self-inflicted, or whether it's the fact that, you guys are, I say you guys, I lived here, lived in the UK for 20 years, but whether it comes to like energy security or regulation, or growth or appreciating aspiration and success. So there are some fundamental differences that I've never seen in the last 20 years I've lived here that you're starting to see now, and exacerbated by this Prime Minister.
Well, he called Chagos an act of stupidity, didn't he?
Yeah, although he may be going back on that. It's unclear now where the US stands on that. I mean, we know what they think, but I think that my understanding is that the way the British have explained it to the US makes the US think like, oh, we're not exactly sure what there is to be done. But no, anybody that looks at it thinks it's, insane.
It's pretty insane.
It's terrible.
Yeah.
Benjamin.
Yeah.
Well, I think Keir Starmer's been quite effective on the world stage. I mean, the relationship with Donald Trump has been much more cordial and productive than most people expected. For example, we've had lower tariffs than other countries got when Donald Trump has tried to impose those. And indeed, when Donald Trump made his monstrous comments about NATO troops not going to the front line in Afghanistan, Keir Starmer called that out, and the very next day, Donald Trump backtracked and essentially apologised for that. So that's been impressive, but also galvanising European leaders around Ukraine, and President Zelensky has spoken highly of Keir Starmer. And so, you know, I think he should be given the credit for those wins where he has delivered them.
What about the tech deal that the US has pulled, you know, the $30 billion pound tech deal that the US pulled because of the online safety bill?
I mean, the fact is that we've got a trade deal with the US, which was more than the three previous Conservative Prime Ministers managed to actually deliver.
It's barely a trade deal. I mean, when you're looking at the actual specifics around the free trade agreement, it's barely a trade deal. We've got so many concessions and restrictions. It was supposed to be the beginning, right? The relationship between the US and the UK had to be stronger in order for it to be negotiated. But by the way, if the UK had any kind of guts, what it would do is it would abolish all tariffs and quotas, and it would be richer. You don't need to spend all of your political capital negotiating these trade agreements. Unilaterally implement a policy of free trade, and that Britain will be richer.
Neil Parish.
Yeah, I think Starmer has done like all leaders. When in real trouble at home, he's gone out onto the world stage. Yes, he has had some successes, but I think, you know, this last trip to China actually showed weakness, not strength. You've got all the problems in Hong Kong and you know, and Lai being locked up for 20 years, and yet the Chinese are, you know, taking no notice whatsoever of us and Starmer. And I think, you know, he has to be very careful, because there is nothing really going right for him in this country, and I'm afraid you can go out onto the world stage, and yes, it gets you a few brownie points, but it doesn't convince anybody of the problems that this government's facing. You know, I mean, I'm a farmer. Look what they did to farmers about inheritance tax, and then they U-turned. And but you don't get any credit, you see, when you U-turn. That's the trouble. All you get is the fact that you were a miserable devil in the first place to put it on, and then get no credit whatsoever, really, for taking it off.
Well, and also the other things that have happened when you made that decision, and we know one farmer may have taken his life as a result of being worried and fearful, and then what you've done to the economy and everything else, the markets that go and you know, we lose money off values, and the bond markets go crazy, and then you change your mind. Stay right there, Neil Parish. We're going to bring on Jonathan Liss, who's been laughing. Jonathan, we can see you. You were laughing again. Look, he's back, and I'm sick of him. Saw him earlier on Sunday. Jonathan Liss, what are you thinking?
Nana, how could you? Nana, how could you say, I've stayed up till 1:30 to talk to you. You can at least be polite.
All right, I'll be polite. Welcome, Jonathan Liss.
Thank you, Nana.
Your thoughts, Jonathan? What are your thoughts?
Well, I have to say, the reason I was laughing, and I like Green very much, but the idea that Britain should unilaterally abolish its tariffs. Why would any country bother to sign a trade deal with Britain if we've already given them everything we want in terms of tariffs? Now, the one thing that Donald Trump is right about, and I don't see him say that very often, is that tariffs can be a tool in your trade toolbox. Obviously, they are one thing that countries want to negotiate with you about. So obviously, they are part of your armory. And when you're negotiating the country, you say, well, we'll abolish our tariffs on this for you. And then you can abolish your tariffs on that, and then obviously reduce your non-tariff barriers as well. The idea that Britain should just, be this sort of Singapore, and by the way, Singapore does have some tariffs, but the idea that Britain should just sort of, unilaterally disarm is absolute nonsense.
Well, we could have used tariffs. We didn't really use any of the tariffs. We saw Donald Trump do it, and then it suddenly, that's a good bargaining chip. And when we were doing the EU defence deal, where we gave away 12 years' worth of fishing for no real anything, we could have used some sort of tariff or some sort of negotiation with the French or something, maybe got them to do something on the borders or something, but we got nothing in return, and that deal hasn't even been completed.
one of the issues is that, you know, we left the European Union, what was it now, 6 years ago, and we haven't made any of those changes. I'm just going to give you one example. We still impose tariffs and quotas on Moroccan tomatoes, despite the fact that there is no protectionist case for it. Tomatoes in the UK are grown at completely different times as they are grown in Morocco, but because we were members of the EU being a protectionist bureaucratic bloc, they introduced tariffs and quotas in order to protect Spanish and Italian growers, and we're still paying for it. We are still imposing tariffs and quotas on Moroccan tomatoes, and that is just one example of low-hanging fruit. Tariffs and quotas, these restrictions, they are literally, yeah, they are. They are literally taxes on our own people, taxes on British people. Tariffs are bad, and we should not be celebrating them.
Tariffs, I certainly agree with you, Ree, about tariffs being bad when Donald Trump does them, use them as weapons, threatening us with tariffs for daring to support Greenland's self-determination. But they are part of a trade policy, and they have been for sort of 200 years around, roughly. And obviously, they are something that you negotiate with your partners, because sometimes your growers do depend on you for assistance, in the same way that people look to a government to help them in all kinds of ways. And if you have an industry and it's being sort of massively undercut by foreign competitors who might have sort of much more beneficial conditions and circumstances, that might be being helped by their own governments, by the way, then tariffs are a way to help your own producers.
Well, Neil Paris must know a lot about that, don't you?
Yeah, it's interesting, really, what's happening in America, because you see, the trouble is every time Trump puts on tariffs, it actually drives the cost of living up in America. And so, you know, he's finding it much more difficult. And of course, the trouble is, it's a bit like Starmer doing U-turns. The trouble with Trump is that he put on massive tariffs and then he takes them off again, but he's done it rather too many times now, and I think while we take him a little bit seriously every time he puts them on, I think we have less effect now than they did to begin with, and I think he's rather made a real pig's ear of the tariff, absolutely, because I think all he's done is driven up America. Nobody trusts them at all on trade, and let's face it, we did all believe that the Americans were the great free traders of the world. Now, if you look at them in reality, they're not, because they also tariffs. They put tariffs on Brazilian ethanol in order to make their own ethanol work from maize. They do all sorts of things in the end, but they were seen to be the great traders, free traders of the world, but they're not.
And can I just say,
I live here now. Groceries are so expensive.
Reem, you can't talk about being tough in the face of the threats from China and then say that there should be no tariffs. We know that China's strategy has been to flood Western markets with cheap products which make us economically reliable on them. The reason why we have tariffs on Chinese cars, which are significantly cheaper than anything we can produce, is because our own car manufacturing sector would collapse and lose us hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of jobs. And if we let China flood the UK market, that would give them more political power and would damage our own workers.
Jennifer.
Yeah, so you said Jennifer, right?
Jennifer.
Just going back to the tariffs, I mean, President Trump ran on tariffs, said he loved tariffs. I mean, Scott Bessent, is jumping up and down about tariffs. And yes, it's absolutely been very, very messy. We all saw the markets crash after Liberation Day, but he does use these as a tool. And he was elected on an America First agenda. And so he is very, very serious about that. And I think it could take a long time for manufacturing, obviously, to, come back on shore. And Reem, I agree with you. I mean, I spent 2 weeks in California at Christmas. Groceries are incredibly expensive. Probably one of the main things that's more expensive in the U.S. than here in London. But, he's not going to give up these tariffs. He's going to continue to use them as a negotiating tool for national security to get what he wants. And so I think people have to get used to it. And again, it makes for people get frustrated with him and don't think he's playing fairly. But to say that we're still, in the free trade business is clearly incorrect. We're not.
All right. Well, listen.
Reem is absolutely right. They are a tax, and they'd be a lot less popular with American voters and Republican voters if he called it what it is, which is a tax.
All right, well, we'll have to leave it
But he's raised revenue from them.
We'll have to leave it there. Jonathan Liss, thank you very much. And also Neil Paris, thank you so much. Right, well, welcome on board. If you just joined us, this is The Late Show Live. I'm Nana Acquia. Now, Bad Bunny made history, becoming the first artist to perform the halftime show at the Super Bowl entirely in Spanish. The Grammy winner gave a high-energy 8-song set that has proved controversial. It has predictably drawn criticism from President Donald Trump. Here's a clip of the set.
Cuba, República Dominicana, Jamaica, Haití, las Antillas, United States, Canadá, a my motherland, mi patria, Puerto Rico. Seguimos aquí.
But it has been slammed by President Trump, who called it absolutely terrible. Well, let's get the reaction from my panel. Let's start with you, Jennifer Ewing. Was that terrible?
You know what? It's not the first time we've seen the Super Bowl halftime show do songs in Spanish. I think it was Jennifer Lopez and Shakira did one a few years ago. We have 40 million odd Spanish speakers in the United States of America. Obviously, we have more English speakers. I think the issue with this was that it was entirely in Spanish and it had a lot of sort of underlying political messages that people found a little offensive. And this is supposed to be a non-political event. It's supposed to be, it is, I know it's not, the biggest sporting event in the world, but it is the biggest in the United States, and there are tons of eyes on that halftime show. And I think that Bad Bunny could have used this as an opportunity to say, hey, you know what is so great about America is that, it's allowed me to have the success that I do. Like, I think people would have liked to see a little more American exceptionalism in this and show how, America has given him a lot of the lanes to become as successful as he is. I think if he had just done that, a lot of the critics who are reasonable would have been placated.
Do you think it was because it was like a load of blokes and you didn't have like a really gorgeous blonde Shakira doing the dance and Jennifer Lopez? Even if she'd sang in Spanish or another language, people would have been quite happy watching that. Instead of a load of sort of airy blokes going, you think, hang on a minute, that's not what he expected. Do you think, Reem, that had something to do with it?
I thought it was absolutely brilliant. I must say, I think Bad Bunny is gorgeous, so maybe all the ladies are quite pro it. I mean, I thought it was fantastic. I really do think if you were offended by 13 minutes of Spanish in the middle of an American football game, then you are probably the snowflake. I mean, I thought that it was really beautifully done. The choreography was fantastic. The set was gorgeous. And we've got to remember here, what Bad Bunny could have done was a really staunch political statement in the middle of the show. Actually, what he did was a really lovely, I thought quite non-divisive message about love. It said very specifically, the only thing stronger than hate is love. And it was all about being an American. I thought it was really beautiful. It was my first time watching the Super Bowl since moving to DC, and I thought it was fantastic. It was a great example of cultural assimilation, and I thought it was really wonderful. I think those people that are really highly critical just need to go and touch grass.
Could you imagine, though, Benjamin, if we'd had something like that here, so we've got a big event, and then they sang in French, and then there was like half an hour of French, a performance in French, and big hairy blokes. I mean, actually, you'd probably like it, but you know what I mean?
It doesn't really translate to Britain, does it? Because obviously the US has a huge proportion of its citizens for whom their first language is Spanish, if not they speak Spanish, and so it's a bit different. I mean, he gave 3 words in English, and those words were God bless America, and then he named all of the countries in the Americas. So I think I have to say, I wasn't really familiar with Bad Bunny until the Grammys the other week. He's not so big in the UK, but he is the most streamed artist of all time. His album has had 21 billion streams, which is double most of Taylor Swift's albums, to put that in context. So he is incredibly popular. And I just watched it and thought it was great fun. I'm actually off to Central America next week, so it's got me in the perfect mood for my holiday. So thank you, Benito Bad Bunny, for that. But the bit I take away from it, I say this, you're both either living in America or a US born, the two of you, is that, my God, does it not drive people mad in that country that everything has to be a culture war. I mean, can you not all just calm down and enjoy the music?
Exactly, and I think that's the point. Like, I agree, you know, with Dream and everything, that the production was exquisite, like, it was wildly entertaining, but let's not forget that Bad Bunny, a few days ago at the Grammys, gave his award to this young boy that was supposed to look like the guy that ICE had used as bait. Now, we know within, you know, a week that had turned out to be a false story. So he's getting his political jabs in there, and I think the Grammys and the way he behaved and this whole underlying ICE issue needs to be part of the context of how people who had a problem last night with the Super Bowl halftime, I think that needs to be, you know, taken into context as well. Consideration.
Yeah, I get it. We'd be a little bit annoyed if somebody did something with a big political message in the middle. I didn't see that because I didn't get what that was. So that's why he was really angry, because they used as something that.
But then,
yes,
our own national anthem. I think it's not clear who wrote the theme tune of our national anthem, but it's also the national anthem of Liechtenstein, of the Norwegian royal family. It was the Prussian national anthem. So, you know, we have foreign talent ingrained in our own pop culture and our own music here. So I don't think it should be such a threat.
Did you see the bit in the middle,
No,
Reem?
definitely not. The royal family's German.
Indeed.
Yes, that is the point. Yeah, I've never been to the Super Bowl. But
you know, it costs. I mean, tickets were like up to $13,000 for an average seat. It's incredibly expensive.
They said something like, within hours of the Super Bowl being over, over 500 private jets left. So there was a lot of money flying into to Santa Clara, which is San Francisco Bay Area, to see it.
Right, well, listen, I've got one more story for you. And this one was an ABC News story, and it's reporting on a trial against Meta in New Mexico, which focuses on the dangers of child sexual exploitation on social media. Reem, this is something that you're really passionate about.
Yeah, the reason why I think it's so interesting is because the first time tech companies like Meta are standing against trial, they're standing with a jury, and they are being accused not based on the content on social media, but they are being accused of creating a platform that is in itself addictive. So what's interesting, I think, is when we're looking at this from the global scale, Britain has said that they want to implement a ban on social media for under 16s. Spain said last week on Tuesday that they want to introduce it, and they're looking at debating it in Parliament either this week or next week. And of course, we know Australia have already introduced a ban on social media for under 16s. Now, personally, I think that this is a really terrible idea, because effectively what we're looking at is lots and lots of young people that actually want to be able to communicate with one another. In Australia, there was a really interesting story of this young girl who's 15 who works on her family's farm, and the only time she gets to speak to her friends who are upwards of 100 kilometres away is when she gets to go on Snapchat and talk to them.
But she can do it. She could do that on the phone. Like, we had phones. We were fine with that. Why does it... Yeah, but it doesn't have to be Snapchat. I mean, Jennifer, you agree with me. We've got about a minute left, but...
Look, I don't like any of this censorship. I think if it was not for social media, there are so many things we would not know about, so-called conspiracy theories that have come true. However, what I find interesting about the article you're talking about, Reem, is the whole thing about they're getting in trouble for making it addictive. Well, can you then say that about cookies and chips and you know, obviously cigarettes are passed, but everything that I know, but everything that most products that people make, you want the user to keep coming back. So again, it's an interesting sort of development in this story that I'd not thought about before.
20 seconds to you, Benjamin.
I think it's a big frontier for technology, because there was a pioneering case last year in the UK about a girl who'd been sexually harassed, exploited in a virtual reality programme, and the police came down on the side of this woman that it counted even though it was digital. And so how do we tackle those threats?
That is a good question and a good cliffhanger to leave this on. I've got to say a huge thank you to my brilliant panel. Benjamin Butterworth, thank you so much. Also, Jennifer Ewing, thank you to you, and Reem Ibrahim out there in Washington, D.C. And as ever, a huge thank you to you at home for watching and for listening. I'll be back at midday tomorrow with the fabulous Tom Harwood. I'll see you then. I'll leave you with this.
Today, clouds overhead. Total zen within. Boxed Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
Hello, good morning. Welcome to your latest GB News weather update. Another dull and damp day to come for many of us. Some heavy showers pushing into the southwest, and it will be a pretty breezy afternoon across the south and the north as well. Now, the rain's going to be quite persistent for many northern areas, particularly across eastern Scotland. That's where there's a rain warning in force from today all the way through until the end of Wednesday. A drier slot of weather will push through across parts of central areas of England, into northern England into this afternoon. Still a lot of cloud around and a risk of some drizzly rain, and into the southwest some heavy showers moving in from the Atlantic into this afternoon. Pretty mild afternoon in the south, but a chillier feel further north with that wind coming off the North Sea into this evening. Those winds remain pretty strong actually across northern areas into this evening, and further persistent heavy rain bring a risk of travel disruption across parts of Aberdeenshire and Angus as well as Fife. Further south, we'll see a lot of cloud around through this evening, still some persistent rain across parts of Northern Ireland, into many northwestern areas of England as well. Very few of us seeing any dry weather throughout Tuesday, in fact. See those heavy showers moving into the south and west. They'll continue to feed in from the southwest throughout tonight with those strong westerly winds as well. Some drier slots of weather, but I think another pretty unsettled and damp night to come. Now, across southern areas, we've still got this westerly wind, so it's going to be another fairly mild night across many southern areas, but a colder feel starting to move in from the north. Frost free though, because we've got a lot of cloud and rain around, but some of that rain will fall as snow over the highest ground of the Grampians through Wednesday morning. Still a rain warning in force through Wednesday for much of northeastern Scotland. Another very damp day to come for many northern areas in particular. Actually, across southern areas there will likely be a drier and perhaps a sunnier interlude of weather through the afternoon, but still another mild feel. Strong winds though moving up from the south, and heavy rain never too far away.
Today, clouds overhead. Total zen within. Boxed Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
I'm Andrew Pearce. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.